Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the second AI data science and statistical analysis tool that I've reviewed. Previously I reviewed one called Julius. Today we're looking at one called Vizly. So with each of these tools, you provide fairly simple plain language explanations of what you would like, upload a data set, and it will perform analysis, interpretation, and data visualization. Certainly some steps beyond what you might get out of something like ChatGPT, and whilst I don't think it's going to be doing me out of a job just yet, the level of analysis and the detail is very, very impressive. I can definitely see it being a big time saver for me when I am doing analysis, and will be a big enabler for people who maybe don't have as much of a background in statistics and data analysis to be doing more of their own analysis and data visualization work. So here on the home page, if we scroll down, we can see a couple of examples. And this is the aesthetic that they have, this kind of black with the purple. And so it'll do visualizations. Has a prompting box where you can ask it to do things. And it'll perform quite detailed analysis as well. So the way they've built it is within a Jupyter notebook. And then it's making calls to an API for a large language model. It's creating the Python code, it shows you all of the code, but it's also able to do interpretation as well. So I've worked through a number of examples, some of which are similar to what I tested with the Julius AI, and a few extra new ones as well. So let's dive in. So here is the interface for Vizly. Pretty straightforward and simple. Top left we have new thread. This is where we are going to start a new set of analysis. Conversations has record of our previous analysis, and files has our data set. I really like this bit here in terms of data security, that files are deleted after an hour of inactivity. One thing I haven't checked up on yet is whether the data stays embedded within these conversations or not. But I do like this in terms of data security, and it shows that they're really thinking about that. One of the big criticisms of a lot of these AI tools, and even ChatGPT, is that people have been uploading things to it and not really thinking about that security and data retention. So pretty pleased with that. Down the bottom, we've got our usual settings. We can manage and upgrade plans. They have a Discord. Up the top here, we've got download. We can download our analysis as a notebook, HTML, PDF, or Word document. So that's really handy. We can also share it as well. So for all of the analysis that I've done, I've been using this dataset, ais.csv. It's a publicly available dataset, and it's got a whole lot of information about athletes from the Australian Institute of Sport. So we can see here that I actually started plot the height versus weight from ais.csv. It showed me just a little preview here of the data. And for everything that it does, we have this button to be able to see the Python code. We're also able to edit the output with AI. So not only can we do our analysis, but we can control what it looks like if this is going to be going into our final output. This is particularly handy when we're doing things like graphs. Here we can see it's done the scatter plot, exactly what I asked for. It even gave me a little sentence here describing it as well. Then I thought I would try something a little bit more advanced. So a PCA, principal component analysis, on the numeric variables, and it had almost no problems. So one thing that they do, and I've actually talked to the developers about this, is that if it tries some code and it fails, it'll actually give us the error message of what happened, what went wrong. For some users, this might be a little bit confusing, overwhelming, and annoying, but if you are going to be taking some of this code, being able to find where there is errors in the code is really handy. When it hits an error, it will then try and rerun, it'll rewrite the code to solve for that error. So we can see that's what's happened here. We've got this one here in this kind of orange color, and then we've got the repeat with it performing correctly. I really like that it has a habit of numbering off what the processes are for a piece of analysis and then going through them step by step. I think this is really nice in terms of nice, clear, reproducible analysis. We're doing our principal component analysis. It's given us our biplot and what we're seeing from our two principal components. So pretty standard. I thought I would continue testing it. So next up, perform a k equals 5 k-means cluster analysis using the numeric variables, and then interpret them using the sports variable. So this is where we're really starting to test. It's not just a case of doing the analysis, but being able to interpret it and being able to interpret it in a meaningful way. And it did a really great job here. So it ran through, created the clusters, and we can expand that out if we want. It's then given us some descriptions of the clusters, linking it up to the most common appearances of the different athletes. I then carried this on by getting it to describe the characteristics of the athletes. And again, really great job. So bullet pointed it off for each cluster, described the particular variables where there was high, moderate, and low that would characterize people who fell into that cluster. Whenever it performs a piece of analysis, it will suggest the next couple of things that you could do based on what it just did. And when it's something with multiple steps, we also will have this button continue the analysis. We'll have a look at a few examples when I've given much more vague instructions and how it'll step through, and this becomes really handy for that. So really nice and clear. So far, doing a really good job of everything I asked for. What I decided to do next was give it instructions that were much more broad with far less detail. So you can imagine a user who is not quite as particular or maybe doesn't know the steps themselves. And so if we jump into the next one, so rather than telling it what to plot or what to do, for this next one I started off by just saying conduct an exploratory analysis. So really vague, but this is the kind of thing that maybe a user with less experience is going to ask for. They just want this final output. They're not maybe knowledgeable enough to know quite what the details are. And it did a pretty good job. So it started off, and we can see that for the numeric variable, it's given the 5-number summary, the mean and standard deviation there. Don't love this distribution chart. It doesn't read very well. But this is probably one where we might come edit output with AI, try and adjust some of these scales, make it a little bit more readable. I think there's a few too many variables here, so it didn't do a great job on that. We've also got edit chart button there as well though. Gave me a quick summary, then I clicked on the continue the analysis button just to see what it would do next. And so it decided that the next thing it wanted to do was look at the correlations. So that's completely unprompted from me. All that it knows is that we're doing some sort of exploratory analysis. And certainly one of the next steps would be looking at these correlations. So it's given us a nice heat map of the correlations. It's given us a summary of the heat map. And so then again, I clicked on the continue the analysis just to see where it went. And we can see just periodically, we're seeing these little output errors. That's okay because it then has run things correctly afterwards. And so the next step is it identified that there was a sex or gender variable in there, and it split the data across the two to give summaries of the female athletes and the male athletes. So we've now got a grouped analysis. Again, completely unprompted, just me clicking continue the analysis, and we can see that if I wanted, I could continue further. So I was pretty pleased with that. Then I thought I would ask another fairly broad question and see how it went with a bit of modeling. So this was pretty interesting. And as I went through, I was a little bit purposely obtuse with some of the instruction. But to start with, I said perform 4 different types of predictive modeling. And the thing we're trying to model or predict is our weight variable. Identify the best modeling method and summarize the model. And it started off really well. So it said, okay, we've got this, it's numeric, linear regression, we've got a couple of different tree models here. All makes sense. Did a little bit of pre-processing. We can look at the code there. So it's split off, so it's got test and training data. It's a little bit problematic in that this is not a huge data set. So it's not a great data set for splitting training and testing, but that's still okay. Then it started trying to evaluate these different models. So it identified the mean square error and the R-squared as possible metrics. It's graphed each of those. And so for a couple of steps, I then just kept clicking continue the analysis just to see where it went. It seemed to have a little bit of trouble deciding which model was the best one. It gave us those stats, and admittedly that's a little bit inconclusive there. So then it dived into some specific random forest stuff. It's got feature importance from the random forest model. It still remembers what the 4 are. And then once I continue the analysis, it wants to check on the residuals. Again, that's good. It seems to now just be doing the random forest model though. And then it got a little bit stuck. So I hit continue the analysis and it said, okay, next we're going to do this, but then it didn't do it. And we went through a couple of iterations where it was just stuck here. Then I thought that I would maybe just give it a little bit of guidance. And so we selected evaluate the feature importance. It was able to do that, which was good. Graphed it as well. Then we got into another prompt of mine, which gave the most accurate predictions, and here it started to fall apart again. We can see multiple errors. Eventually it got something that actually spat out this table. You can see the accuracy of the different methods, but all of a sudden we've got k-nearest neighbor and logistic regression. Somewhere along the line it has suddenly gone from the original 4 to just being obsessed with random forest to logistic and KNN being added in here instead. That was a little bit weird, and some of this is certainly my fault by not giving good specific prompts. But I wanted to see what would happen, and I think particularly if you're passing it on to more junior staff members and they are not giving it good prompts and they maybe don't know all of the methods quite as well, then it's nice to know what the tool is going to do under these conditions where it's not being used quite as well. So at this point, I decided to abandon this let's have four different predictive models and try and select which is the best one. And I thought I would just see how it goes with something a little bit more specific. So find and interpret the best linear regression model. And I wanted to see whether maybe it might do some sort of stepwise regression or quite how it would interpret what this is. Again, slightly better instruction, but not perfect. It looked at the correlations. It identified the most highly correlated. Unfortunately, they are all also very correlated with each other. So we have some real multicollinearity issue with trying to approach the data in this way. It gives us this table of regression results. It's nice and thorough, gives all of our figures, gives some diagnostics as well. Got a summary here where it's identifying that it's now got a very high R-squared value, indicating that it's a good model, but it itself was able to identify that there was potential issue of multicollinearity. So that was really good that it's doing its own diagnostics. It's not perfect with it, but it's certainly trying. So that was pretty good. And then I got it to just check. We can see some really big VIF there. And that was where I stopped. I thought this was probably about the point where I've given it a pretty good test. Overall, really good job, particularly when I was giving it nice, clear, explicit instructions of what I wanted. Really nice that you can download in these different formats. Really great that you can edit the output. And overall, just a really good, solid tool. So really glad that I came across this one. I guess one next step, which I am really looking forward to for some of the research data, which has a lot of security and privacy provisions around it, is being able to have tools like this that are operating locally. I think that's going to be the next step for them, in addition to getting even better with being able to do the analysis and understand the prompts, being able to do it in a fashion, particularly if you're in academia, you're working with private research data. I guess even if you're in a commercial environment, same thing will apply. So that's it for today. This was Vizly, so vizly.fyi, and I will be back really soon with more videos on stats, AI, research, and random stuff.